So I'm sure by now you have heard the news at some point, either in the media or from one of the other 2 million other real estate agents that are talking about this NAR or NAR lawsuit, which if you're not familiar stands for the National Association of Realtors. And frankly, I don't want to talk about what I think most other people are talking about. And I'm going to explain this the way that we always do, which is boiling it down to its simplest form, really trying to explain it at like a 3rd grade level. Now, if you haven't already heard, there are a million other articles you can probably check out. But basically, to put it in its simplest form, there was a class action lawsuit against NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, which all realtors are obviously a part of. And this lawsuit was on 3 major things that I'm going to break down in this video. And if you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Christian Stubbs. I'm a team leader and owner here of Onyx Homes, and in these videos I really just like to make sure that I am putting out information that is the most important thing that we feel like is going on right now. So I'm going to dive in. There's 3 major things that I'm going to cover in this video. Number 1, first and foremost, is that why was there a lawsuit in the first place? Number 2 is what were they trying to change? And then number 3, what actually happened? Now, before I dive into the top 3 things that I wanted to talk about, I do have a little bit of a side note that I think will give context to the bigger discussion at hand, which is this whole lawsuit and what the changes are going to happen to the real estate industry, because there will be changes. There's going to be huge changes for real estate agents, and there's going to be big changes for buyers and frankly for sellers as well too. So if you're thinking about moving at any point in the future, this video will probably be good to help understand what changes are very likely to come to the real estate space in the middle of 2024. Now, here's the side note that I wanted to mention. I just Googled an article, and the title of the article, I've got my notes down here, was 14 Most Hated Professions, which placed real estate agents at number 7, right in between politicians and traffic police officers. So a real estate agent is right between a politician, which I think we all have our own feelings about, and the people who write you tickets. That's how low real estate agents are ranked as far as professions. And to be quite honest, that doesn't surprise me at all. As an owner of a company of real estate agents and a realtor myself, I talk to real estate agents all the time. And one of the number 1 things that has always amazed me about this business is that you can get licensed for, in California, less than $2,000 once you've paid the national. So you really only get licensed for about $300 or $400, and then you have a couple $1,000s in fees. Maybe for $2,000 you can get licensed and you can do a deal on day 1 having no idea what you're doing. And this is something I don't think a lot of real estate agents talk about, but the brokerages that I will not name, but you know their names, do a terrible job of training real estate agents, which is why there's one of the major reasons why there is a 87% failure rate within the first 5 years for real estate agents getting into the business. Another fun fact is that 49% of all real estate agents in 2023 sold either 1 or 0 homes, which means you as a consumer have a 50% chance of working with an agent if you don't do your homework that has literally no experience or 1 transaction of experience in the last 12 months, which is terrifying. There's 2 things that have always amazed and frustrated me. Number 1 is just how easy it is to get your real estate license. I think they'd solve a lot of problems by making it harder to get. And number 2 is that consumers oftentimes assume that real estate agents are all equal, and it couldn't be farther from the truth. And this is really where some of the lawsuit really stems from, and I understand this part, because you can have a real estate agent day 1 on the job not knowing what they're doing at all versus the absolute best agent in the area or in the marketplace, and the rate or the fee or the price they charge is pretty much the same, and that doesn't make any sense. If you were to talk about attorneys as opposed to real estate agents, I think we all know there are really inexpensive options, maybe like LegalZoom or something like that. And then there are the big top 5 law firms that are going to be incredibly expensive. They're going to be very, very different, and you're going to get what you pay for. So in real estate, it shouldn't be any different. And I think that's the good that's going to come out of this lawsuit. But at the same point, it really is going to be up to the clients, so you in this scenario, to make sure that when you're working with a real estate agent, you're actually realizing that you're hiring that real estate agent and they're making money because you've hired them, and not using an agent out of obligation because it's a family member or somebody that you do business with, that they do it part-time and you want to do them a favor. As long as you know you're doing them a favor and you're paying them for that favor, that is really what I think is extremely important. And let me be clear, I own a real estate company and we hire brand new agents. Now, I feel confident with those brand new agents out in the field helping consumers because First and foremost, we have an enormous training program that our agents go through before they're able to do anything out in the field at all. Number two, all of our agents have continued education that they continuously go through, and we are always talking about what is changing, what's going on in the market. That's number two. But number three, for our brand new agents to the business, they are all paired with a mentor that is a top agent in the industry. So even if you were working with a brand new agent on our team, Onyx Homes, you could be rest assured that that new agent has a mentor, which is a top agent, guiding them through every step of the way. So there's nothing wrong at all with new agents. There's nothing wrong with working with new agents. I just think it's important, as a side note, for you as a consumer to understand that whoever you choose to work with, you are hiring that person to do a job, and they're going to be compensated for that. And really, as a buyer, you are paying for that service. All right, now that I got my side point out of the way, I'm gonna dive in and answer the first question that I mentioned, which is why was there a lawsuit in the first place? Now, the argument came from, in this lawsuit, that sellers should not have to pay a buyer's agent when they list their property. So how it has always worked in the MLS is if you are listing with a real estate agent and posting the property in the MLS, you do have to pay a buyer's agent commission. Now, what has actually changed here is that they removed the fact that you have to pay a buyer's agent. They did this change already about last year, and they lowered the minimum amount of compensation you could put in the MLS all the way from $1 down to $0. That is the entire change that so far has taken place, because sellers should not have to pay for a buyer's agent commission. Even if that commission was a minimum of $1 or a penny, I think, and now it's $0, that change should have been in effect, and I 100% agree with that. Sellers should not have to do anything. It should be their choice. Now, the problem isn't really that the seller has to pay the buyer's agent. The problem is transparency, and I'm gonna go back to the idea of a lot of people choose to work with a real estate agent either out of obligation or as a favor, mostly only on the buy side. Very rarely is somebody willing to trust an agent that might not be the right person for the job just because of an obligation if they're selling a property, because it feels more like you are really paying that real estate agent to do the job. So people are much less likely to do that out of a favor. But on the buy side, when there is a lack of transparency, there's room for shady. And I'm sure you've heard terms like this from a buyer's agent, and is you don't have to pay me anything. I work for free for you. My compensation's paid for by the seller. Now, that last one might be kind of true, but you as the buyer are bringing all the money to the table. So really, who is paying that buyer's agent? Also, the buyer is obviously choosing the buyer's agent, and you're hiring them to represent you. So you really are paying that buyer's agent. And there's been a ton over the years of agents that will take advantage of this and get deals because they were telling their buyers that they really weren't paying them anything. So what a great deal if I don't have to pay you anything and you're willing to do this work for me. Now, let me give you a story here as well too. This literally just happened yesterday, and we had a client that we had been working with. We went through our consultation, and he ended up sharing with our agent that he was gonna work with his lender, who is also a real estate agent, because he was gonna credit him back 70% of his buyer's agent commission. Now, here's the reality. Obviously, he didn't explain to the buyer that the buyer's paying him. How can you refund part of your commission that you're charging? It'd be like an attorney saying, I'm gonna charge you $10,000 to work out this contract, and then I'll credit you back $5,000. That doesn't make any sense. So this huge lack of transparency is why there was a lawsuit in the first place, to answer the question. And the number one reason why this has come up is because so many agents have steered away from having the conversation about compensation. Why? I have no idea. I've talked to agents that have been in the business for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and for some reason, there is this huge stigma with not wanting to talk about how compensation works as a buyer's agent, when it is so normal to talk about as a seller's agent. You don't really have a choice. So this is something that we've always done with our company, and we do this through what we call a buyer strategy session. If you've been following along, you've probably heard me talk about this a lot. And this is something where we go through and we literally ask the question, hey, are you familiar with how real estate agents get paid? And in my experience, 90% of people just like you say, no, I have no idea how real estate agents get paid. I had a transaction earlier this year where I was sitting down with a woman who has sold 7 properties. That means she's bought 7 properties. So 14 transactions and nobody has ever explained to her how real estate agent commissions actually work. She was under the impression she really knew how things work, and when I asked her the question, she said, go ahead and explain it to me anyway. I explained it and she said, oh my God, that's not at all how I thought it worked. So 14 transactions and somebody really felt like they knew what was going on and they really didn't. And that goes to show you just how little transparency there really has been and why we feel so clearly transparency is the way to go. And we do this through our buyer strategy session. If you're interested in any more information on that, there'll be a link somewhere you can go ahead and click on, but let me move on. So question number one was, why was there a lawsuit in the first place? And the easy answer is there was a lack of transparency. Now the question number two that I'm gonna answer is, what were they trying to change with this lawsuit? Well, they wanted to change that there was a lack of transparency. And in this lack of transparency, there should be no confusion. It should be very straightforward as to how your agent is compensated. And I 1000% agree. I could not agree more with that statement at all. And if you would go back to 2008, there was a huge overhaul in the mortgage industry about transparency as well too. And now I think the mortgage industry is in a much better space than it was before that. And I think this is going to be a similar change for real estate agents, which is good for everybody. But with that comes a message that has been twisted in a million different directions. Now, I don't want to get political with this video, but I do want to kind of explain is that from every reputable company that you would read a news article from, there has been terrible misinformation out there. There has been the end of 6% real estate agent commissions. There has been the end of the buyer's agent. There's been so many I've seen some crazy articles and none of them are true whatsoever. The real estate agent commissions have always been negotiable. There are brokerages that charge a flat fee of a small dollar amount. There's 1% listing brokers, and there are brokers that charge over 6%. And there's everything in between, right? There is an open market, and real estate agent commissions are negotiable. And one of the messages that I think has been very interesting to hear is that people do think somehow that prices are going to come down because they think real estate agent commissions are going to come down. As if a seller is going to list a property and say, well, I'm saving 3% on or 2% with the buyer's agent commission. I'll just lower my price and give somebody a better deal. I don't think any sellers are going to do that. I just sold my house a couple of years ago, and I certainly wasn't about to lower my price because I didn't have to pay myself. That doesn't make any sense. So I don't think there's any world where prices are going to come down because of anything that's happened here, which is one of the arguments that was made in the lawsuit as well too. Now, here is the biggest thing that I'm most concerned with is with all the misinformation is there is already a misunderstanding or a misconception that buyers are better served going directly to the listing agent to buy their property. And if you've bought a property before, you probably know that that is not a great idea. And the reality is, as a buyer, you are not trained in real estate. You may or may not be comfortable or trained in negotiations. And most people only purchase a property every 2, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So how could you be as skilled of a negotiator as the professional or expert, God forbid, listing agent whose job is to protect the seller and sell that house for as much money as possible? And the third thing is they don't care what house you buy. Their job is to sell that house for as much money as possible. So why would that person be the best person to represent you as the buyer, to protect you through the entire process, to get you the best deal possible, and to make sure that you're taking advantage of everything you can? You cannot do that as a dual agent representing both the buyer and the seller. Nobody can make that make sense to me. And again, I'll go back to the attorney example. Let's say you're a buyer thinking about buying $1 million house. Well, let's say you were sued and an attorney gives you a letter saying, hey, my client's suing you for $1 million. Would you ask that same attorney to defend you for $1 million? Maybe even if he gave you a discount off of his fee, would you trust that attorney that's suing you to also be your defendant? That makes no sense whatsoever. So I think that's my biggest concern with this, is that even more people are gonna feel that they're making the right decision by working directly with the listing agent. We have heard one horror story after the next. When this happens, I think it's just extremely unfortunate, and this is probably the biggest message that is being pushed by the media, is you don't need a buyer's agent. You don't need to pay. No, you don't need to, but I don't think it's in 99.9% of buyers' best interest to go with the listing agent. I'll give you one more story with this as well too, is as a business owner, I am looking at commercial spaces. Now, I am a real estate agent myself, but I am not a commercial real estate agent. And I was looking at properties that are commercial properties to potentially purchase for my company. And dealing with the listing agent in a world that I'm not super familiar with because I'm not a commercial agent, I'm able to read between the lines and see that he's telling me one thing to do, which is not best for me, it's best for his client. Once he realized I wasn't going to purchase the property he was representing, he told me all of the things that I should have been aware of that property after he knew that I wasn't going to purchase that property, because he wanted me to hire him as the buyer's agent. Somebody that just proved to me they could not be trustworthy because they did not tell me everything I should have been aware about with this property until after he knew that I wasn't going to buy it. And I want to make that crystal clear, that is the problem with dealing with a listing agent. And I am an educated, in real estate, very good negotiator. And if I hadn't picked up on those different things, I might have bought a property that was terrible for what I was looking to do. So in the end, the question number 2 is, what were they trying to change? And the answer is transparency. Now moving on to number 3, which I think everybody wants to hear, is what actually changed? Well, there's 2 fundamental changes that have happened. Number 1, first and foremost, buyer's agent commission is no longer allowed to be posted in the MLS. But number 2 is that real estate agents have to enter into an agreement with their buyers in order to work with them. And work with them even means before showing them a property. So if you're a friend or family member and you say, hey Christian, I want to go see this house, can you show it to me? You and I have to enter into an agreement that has a timeline, whatever compensation, and all the other normal things you would have in a contract of what it would look like to work together. Now, is that a little forward? Is that a little too much? I don't know. We're gonna see how it works out. But the reality is there's going to be a lot of changes around this. So let's unpack the 2 things really quick. Now, in my opinion, I think one of these is good and one of these is gonna be not great for the industry. But I won't share which is which until the end, and I'll let you kind of see if you can pick up what I am talking about. Now, no buyer's agent commission will be listed in the MLS. That is the first point. This does not mean that sellers are not allowed to pay a buyer's agent commission. This just means that the buyer's agent commission will no longer be posted. So if you're watching this before July 2024, go to Zillow, go to Redfin, go to Realtor.com, go to wherever, and you're gonna be able to see the buyer's agent commission is posted online. That sounds like transparency to me. Now, to be honest, I still feel like most sellers are gonna look at all of the available data and realize that it's probably in their best interest to still compensate a buyer's agent. Now, what is the fee going to be? I don't think it's gonna change all that much. I think there's gonna be different models for buyer's agents, which we'll talk about in a future video. But I still think most sellers are going to look at all the available data and realize that it's always been normal to pay a buyer's agent because you are offering compensation for someone to bring a buyer and sell your house. I still think that's gonna be the normal. Are there gonna be people that choose not to? Yes. Just like there are people that choose to do for sell by owner or choose to sell for a cash offer for way less than they would normally get. People do all kinds of different things and there's different options for different people, and that's totally fine. Again, I wanna underline my concern here because this is the one where I don't know if this is gonna be good for everybody, mostly because I think there's gonna be so much misinformation about working with the listing agent being the best thing for the consumer. And I think if you've done any amount of homework on that, or you've heard stories, certainly if you were in my shoes, I think you would feel 99% of buyers would not be in a better position by doing that. That's my number 1 concern with this first point. Now let's move on to the second point, which is that agents have to enter into an agreement with buyers before really doing much of anything. I think this is a fantastic point. I love this idea. And the reason I love this idea is because frankly, most real estate agents are gonna be uncomfortable doing this. I like this from a competitive standpoint because this is something we've always talked about with our team. We do this all the time. I mentioned our buyer strategy session before, and I mentioned that we're super transparent. So we talk about compensation, we talk about how we get paid, we talk about how much we expect to get paid. And we have always worked this way. It's something that is just how I think it should be. So for every real estate agent to be on an even playing field where they have to enter in an agreement with the buyer is gonna really realize that they are hiring that real estate agent. They're not choosing to work with, or they're not doing a favor, or they're not whatever. I think this is going to open the eyes of the consumer that whoever they choose to work with actually really matters. And I think there's gonna be a huge separation from the agents that are really expert professionals in the industry versus agents that are more on the discount side. And there's nothing wrong with either one. I think there's a place for everything. But I think there's gonna be a bigger divide between the top real estate agents in the industry and the discount brokers that need to charge less or choose to charge less because they offer a lower level of service. We've all heard the term, you get what you pay for. I just think that's gonna be underlined with this massive change. This is gonna bring a lot of change to how real estate agents choose to do business. So if you're watching this before this change actually happens, for the record, this is gonna start July of 2024, where buyers have to enter into an agreement in order to even see a home. So if you're watching this before that, I would highly recommend start doing your research now, because when you're gonna start hearing these conversations more and more, which you might not have, again, because most agents don't have these conversations in the first place. But if you want, I would highly recommend reaching out to your Onyx agent, or if you're not already working with one of our agents, go to our website and ask for a buyer strategy session. I think it's at least something that we offer completely for free, where you can learn about 3 major things. Number 1, we are gonna share with you what our clients are doing to take advantage of the market. Now, number 2 is we're gonna talk about how we keep you protected through the entire process. And number 3, we're gonna talk about how we get you the best deal possible under whatever the circumstances are. So we do that for all of our clients. I kind of jokingly say it'll take 20 minutes or 2 hours depending on how many questions you ask. So if you wanna set that up, reach out to your Onyx agent or go to our website, socalhomesforsale.com, and ask for a buyer strategy session. Now again, like I mentioned earlier, you as a consumer have a 50% chance of working with an agent that has done 1 or 0 transactions in the last 12 months. So my biggest piece of advice to you is to make sure, do your due diligence, make sure the agent you choose to work with and you hire to represent you through probably your biggest purchase is somebody that really knows what's going on. And sellers, you better make sure that you are talking with an agent that absolutely knows what's going on in this market. I don't really care if somebody's been in the business for 30 years or 4 years or 3 years. What is going on right now is different than it's ever been. So you have to make sure that the agent you choose to work with knows what's going on right now, not what was going on 5, 10, 20 years ago. I would love to hear what you think. Please put them down in the comments, reply if you're on our email. If you are not getting this in your email inbox every single week, go to ocmarketupdates.com and register for this is our weekly newsletter. Again, my name is Christian Stubbs. I hope you found this valuable. If you want to set up a buyer strategy session, there's a link down below, and I'll talk to you soon. I'll see you in the next video. Bye. All right, thanks for watching the video. I hope you found it helpful. If you want to hear more about this buyer strategy session that we talk about all the time, I did an entire video on it. It'll be up here on the screen. I'll see you in that video. Talk to you later.